Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Trained Man, and man, I got a little bit of a late start there on the video. Oh well. So here we are. We are with the goal of... Well, we did not complete the terrain here on the Providence to Worcester section of the 2-foot gauge, but we got close. We got a significant portion of the route done, and it looks a lot better than it did before, let me tell you. Some areas are still a little rough around the edges, and some areas are still flat, and some areas... One in particular needs terrain tracks still. But we got most of the terrain done. Next episode we should have the terrain done and be able to move on to the scenicking almost completely. So, that's good. That's an enormous plus. And then once we get the big scenic done, which is basically trees and... hold on, what is it? Trees and grass. Not grass. Trees and green. Green and trees. Mouth of the river, there we are. Alright, so we gotta put a bridge here. There we are. Alright, so where to go from here? We need hills, obviously. We need some hills that go along the side of the river, because the river, obviously, carved a large portion of the, of the ground. And one of the things I try to do is I try to keep all my stuff realistic by keeping in mind what kind of terrain features, or what would cause certain kinds of terrain features. Obviously this area was glaciated. I'm not sure if that's the correct term, but close enough. And so, of course, it was under a couple kilometers of ice, which is what created the Drumlins. The Drumlins! And we go here from the Providence Plain, which was a floodplain. The reason it's so flat is it was the bottom of an enormous lake that was behind a natural barrier. I'm not really sure what you call it, but it was sort of a natural dam. And that eventually broke and became the river we know today. But it made it so that a lot of the area over there was very, very flat because it was at the bottom of a lake. And the dam wasn't overtopped and broken one night. It was a period of probably hundreds of years that it was slowly worn away. And so we get some of the little falls that we've seen, and into the valley, which is a little bit more heavily eroded than the Providence floodplain. So we've got to work on this. We're going to throw in a couple of lakes here, but not so many. We've got a couple of kettle lakes that we build shortly. But mostly we're building mountains that slowly turn to drumlins as we get past the Providence floodplain and into the area where there was glaciation. And we've got a couple of the bigger hills to build first. Oh, little game freeze. Don't worry about that. We'll be alright. Alright, so here we are back again. Game freeze over. We are, zooming out repeatedly to see what's going on. And towards the end of the episode, of course, I get a little bit tired with the building and sit back and admire my own handiwork once or twice or a lot of times. Because the area is going to look beautiful if we do it right, and I'm tempted to do it with speed trees. Anyways, I'm not sure if I really want to do it with speed trees, but we have to be sparing with our splines because I want there to be a lot of grass. So here we go, another hill over here. And of course drumlins are elongated, and they're, well, it ought to be sloped in one direction more than the other. Like at the front of a drumlin it's steeper than at the back, and the ice flow would go from the back to the front. No, front to the back. Ice flow would go to the front to the back, so drumlins point away from the terminator of the glacier. The terminal moraine. Alright, so same old, same old. You know, it's very interesting to do these kinds of large sections of terrain because, I mean, I've said it a dozen times, and this is sort of what I'm getting at. It's like a puzzle, you know? You do a little bit, and it looks like it connects to this, connects to this, connects to this. And occasionally, unfortunately, you'll get to the sections where it doesn't look like anything connects to it. And at that point, that's when you just have to push through and go, well, I mean, it's sorta, I mean, I guess I have to put something here. Anyways. So, coming around here, we're building, okay, a lake, little lake, Kettle Lake. Very small, actually, one of the smallest ones we have, and not particularly pointed, because it isn't in the drumlin field yet. We get a little bit more heavy on the drumlins the farther we go, and towards the end we actually get some pretty fat-looking ones. Obviously the glacier was not moving nearly as quick over this area as it was the others. Even though we've got this river here, which is doing a little bit in the way of showing where the glacier used to flow. Sorry. We've got to build this barricade between the pit of death and the rail line so that it's clear the river doesn't flow down that way. Because obviously it doesn't. It flows the other way, and it would want to flow into the pit of death, but that just doesn't happen. Quite simply. So we're building this barrier, and honestly, with the striations that were taken from the terrain tracks, it doesn't look quite so bad. And we end up building a similar barrier on the outside of the tracks, and to an extent I regret this, but I'm gonna have to push through with it this way, because, you know, we're stuck with it like that anyways. It's not a big deal. Oh, come on, you can do it. There we are. Okay, so we end up building the track down. Obviously, we're blowing out all the rules for how this is supposed to work. And I also make the tightest Y I've ever built. Although it's kind of appropriate for 2-foot gauge. The 2-foot gauge trains would be fine. Anyways. Oh, excuse me. Anyways. So we're building sort of, I'm not really sure what to call them, but just bits of mountain that sort of pair off and look like they slope down, like they've been eroded towards the pit of death as the water washes down them. I was in the middle of a thought, I'm pretty sure, and I got distracted by, well, nothing in particular, but I got distracted. I tend to do that. So, we're coming along the edge here, building these mountains at 8 times speed, of course. We've got a box in the pit of death, and I decide not to, actually. I don't completely. You notice it's in kind of a hole. And there are a couple of places that I was going to throw off spur lines here and decided not to because, well, where are they going to go? We are within sight of almost every single angle that we could possibly have over here. And, yeah, there's a couple ways we could probably send a train. But I'm not so keen on exploiting that. This is going to be a lake, I think. Yeah, it's a lake. Fill it in and then lower it. There we are. Big lake, and it connects to that river over there, if you saw me gesturing. In-game, not, I mean, I know you can't see me gesturing in real life. That's not what I mean. Okay, so, also we're building this ridge back here. Sort of drumlin. Not really, though. It's just a ridge. You'll notice that we haven't worked on the river too heavily again, and that's because I really don't know where to go with it. It's kind of just a pain right now. I'm going to have to use that waterfall sample 1 or 2 more times in order to keep the coverage of the waterfall sound constant. And the waterfall sound, yes, is obnoxious, but it adds something to the fact that we have just, you know, textures as waterfalls, which is something you don't want. It looks kind of stupid, honestly. So putting the waterfall sound there adds something and makes it a little bit more convincing. Alright, but we lower this, and I know we go to put some water here, obviously, and obviously you can't put water over the whole thing yet, because it's you know, up a little bit. And that's probably where we're going to start when we start working on the river again. And I come back here for the second time today and do a little bit more terrain tracks. I don't finish it. I don't know why. But this area is more or less, you know, it's not particularly important. It's not really that worth paying attention to. It doesn't demand our best terrain work. Although, you know, put your best in everything, why not? But so we come over here, decided to put these. I snagged these off the DLS. And that doesn't go there. So I added 4 of those mansions because, well, really no reason other than why not. And I did want mansions there. Of course, those weren't particularly the ones I was thinking of. But it was nice to have mansions like that. I was thinking more than Newport mansions, if you guys know. But I don't know. So we're adding that. Get rid of that, and I don't think we touch that again. We don't touch that area again for the next, you know, for the rest of this episode. See, I'm putting this river in a valley, and obviously it does spend most of the time in a valley because it is a river and it carved a valley. But sticking the track, you know, wedged in there like that is probably never the best decision. I mean, it's realistic. So, you know, tracks will spend a lot of their times wedged in river valleys because that's just where it's convenient to lay them most of the time. And you wonder why tracks follow rivers. It's because rivers carve paths through mountains and tracks to go through, or hills, in the case of what I would like to call them. I'm just makes fun of my appellations. Anyways, Fat Drumlin, sort of mountain ridge, really, hill ridge. And it looks a little bit wonky, and I go, you know, I really don't like that. And what I probably should have done is just raise the land to that height and then put another hill on top of it. But I didn't think of that at the time, so we're stuck with a wonky-looking hill. And in the other area, I just sort of filled out with random hills. This will be done over with maple, beech, and birch, and nobody's really going to be looking at it too hard. So we've got this over here, and I come over and just, you know, add a couple of drumlins, and I'm sort of making a note shape, almost like, you know, 2 notes connected by a bar on the top, like a pair of 8 notes. And then I put something in the middle of them to make it a little less bland, and then I put something next to them that is unconnected, I believe. Just so that, you know, we don't end up with a lot of things connected in the same way. Anyways, so I'm getting to the point where I'm just mousing over. I'm trying to figure some stuff out. I'm going crazy slightly. Adding some hills. Adding a drumlin. Adding some fat drumlins. I'll do that in a minute. Those go on the other side, actually. There's a pretty wide and not so steep drumlin over here. And we go and connect stuff off. You know, obviously there's that hill there, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense that you get stuff that looks like this. Because it would either be flowing away from the river, which isn't true, and uphill, which also isn't true. Or, you know, you've just got some very odd terrain features. So I'm going to take care and not do that again. Or water is the most shaping feature that there is, really, on this earth. Other than, you know, us. But we don't do that much mountain moving, at least in most cases. So we're still at the will of the rocks and the water. And next time we demolish a mountain range, let me know. Anyways, But yeah, no, in the short term it's us. In the long term it's most definitely water. But that's why you gotta pay attention to where the water is flowing on your maps. So, hope you guys enjoyed this lesson on water physics. And I'll see you next week. Trainman out.